Brace yourselves. A powerful force is brewing. Growing in size, gathering strength with each passing moment. The calm before the storm won't last long. When it hits, it'll be an experience like no other. A whirlwind of emotions, sleepless nights, and life-altering transformation. Get ready for the ride of your life. It's going to be a wild, beautiful, and unforgettable outbreak. And nope, we're not going storm chasing. We're going off the radar for a tell-all conversation with Meteorologist Moms. Mother's Day is right around the corner, and these green screen queens are letting the dirty details of motherhood rain down. From accidental on-air pregnancy announcements.
So it came out, it's 6 weeks for me. And so I had to battle through, that mind of oh my gosh, if I lose this, I'm going to have to tell everyone.
To going into labor in the studio. These mamas have seen it all.
I'm about to go and do my audition for them, and the milk spilled all over my dress.
No topic is off limits.
But lightning cloud is probably the best way to describe it because it feels like that.
Chikage Windler, Tera Blake, and Amy Aaronson join me today in this candid conversation as we dive into the complexities of balancing parenthood with a career in TV weather. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie, and you're listening to Off the Radar, a production of the National Weather Desk. On the show, we dig deep into topics about weather, climate, the ocean, space, and much more. Our goal is to help you better understand the weather and to love it as much as we do. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and caregivers out there. Today's episode is a little longer than some of the others, but it's also a great conversation with 3 incredible meteorologists and mothers that I think will resonate with many of you. I know this holiday can be difficult for many, and I acknowledge, understand, and empathize with your pain. But I think listening to this episode will bring a lot of joy and a lot of laughter to you as well. Now, just a heads up to anyone listening with kids, while this episode is not technically explicit, there is some candid talk of pregnancy, childbirth, breastfeeding, and all the fun that goes along with that. I had a blast recording this episode, getting to know these amazing women, and I hope you do too. Please enjoy Meteorologist Moms. Thank you all for coming on. I can't believe we got all of this in one time so quickly and got it together. But I'm thrilled to have all 3 of you on the show because some of you I know personally, some of you I have just seen on the National Weather Desk. But I know you're all moms, and I know you're all moms kind of bringing different angles to this. And I'd love to hear all these different unique views of what you've experienced, from new motherhood like Amy to more veteran motherhood like Chikage. But let's start. I want to introduce all of you. Let's start with Chikage because you're a chief meteorologist at our CBS station in Austin. And you have how many kids, Chikage?
So I have 2 kids. And for me, I started my journey with Sinclair pretty much while in the process of being pregnant, while I was interviewing and having the baby. And they actually had someone fill in for me until I got back from maternity leave from my previous station so I could come and work for Sinclair.
Do they know that you were pregnant when they hired you?
When they first reached out to me, they said, yeah, we're looking for a chief meteorologist. And I said, when do you need someone? They said, December 31st. And I said, well, I'm having a baby in November, so I don't think I'm quite on the same timeline as you. And I just left it at that. And I figured, okay, well, that ship has sailed. But then what happened is literally the day after I gave birth, I got another call and they said, are you still available? And I was like, well, now I just had the baby, but maybe. And again, I was like, if your timeline's still December, my timeline's still not December. So as it worked out, they interviewed me and I flew out with a 3-week-old baby at home, which was really tough. And then came out and interviewed and then started kind of negotiating. And ultimately, we moved out and it was March. So a 4-month-old with a new job in a new city, in a new house.
And then, so how long ago was that? How old are your kids now?
So I have a 5th grader and I have a high schooler.
And Tera, you have 3 boys. Tera Blake is from our Cincinnati station, Local 12 in Cincinnati. Is that right? And you have 3 boys, which is mind-blowing to me.
A lot. Yes. Yeah. I've got 3 boys. I've got an 11-year-old, so 5th grade, almost 9-year-old, 3rd grade, and then I've got a kindergartner. So all of mine officially in school for the first time, and they're all at the same school, which is pretty cool. But I also, all 3 of my boys were born in 3 different cities, all C cities. So my first was born in Charlotte. My middle was born in Cleveland. My last was born here in Cincinnati.
Awesome.
Yes.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Are their names? Their names should start with C.
Are you crazy? I can't even get their names right now, let alone have it be something similar like that. Yes.
And you are on the morning shift, right?
Yep, I'm
and
the morning
Chikage's
shift.
on the evenings. And then we've got kind of somebody who moves around a little bit, Amy Aaronson. I'm so glad you're on too, because you are our newest mom. And you have a very cute little 7-month-old baby that I love seeing pictures of. But tell me a little bit about your schedule and your little one.
So I have a 7-month-old. So I'm a super new mama. It even feels weird to call myself a mom because I still don't feel like a mom, but she is so good. She's the best baby. But yeah, I work crazy schedules. I'm weekend mornings and then wherever they need me during the week. Typically I'm mornings, 3 mornings a week, but as you all know, things happen. So I'm all over the place. I kind of jump in as needed, which is a little harder to do these days with more of a schedule now that we have childcare and my husband's job. He travels and he works from home. So we're both all over the place. What I've learned is no week is the same. So we have a calendar up in our office here and we just try to keep track. But luckily we kind of figured out a childcare situation that works really well. Our babysitter is super flexible and it's kind of worked out so far, but then again, I'm only a few months in.
That's lucky. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. What did you all do for childcare? Because we never really even did daycare because it just didn't work out with schedules. We did like babysitters, nannies, grandparents, like just hodgepodge of different childcare situations.
Yeah, for me, same. I've never lived close enough to family. My family's from Central Illinois, very small. My actual hometown is 300 people. So Cincinnati's the closest I've ever lived to home and it's 5 hours away. So we've always had to have nannies. When we moved here to Cincinnati, my husband's dad sadly passed away when he was very young and he wanted that extra time with our kids. And so he was able to do things from the home and take care of the kids until I got home and would take over. So that worked out the best. But you've got to have really flexible childcare because, our job just changes like that. And, you have to go in and you don't really get a say. So I think for me personally, the nanny was the only way I could survive it.
Chikage, what about you?
We had a nanny with my oldest because both my husband and I were working at the time. But with the move to Austin, we decided that we didn't know anybody. My job was going to be a lot more demanding since this is a chief meteorologist position, and it's a lot harder to say, "Oh, sorry, daycare. Oh, sorry." You have to be there for the job. There are no questions. You can't make excuses ever. And knowing that, my husband and I were chatting, and I said, "Well, let's work the numbers. Let's do the math. How much would it cost to get childcare or to figure out a daycare situation?" And by the time all was said and done, we decided, you know what? A stay-at-home dad. That's what my husband's going to be.
Oh, yes.
And so I know not a lot of people are fortunate enough to have that luxury, but we were very, very lucky that he was able to stay home, take care of the kids, which was especially important given the fact that we moved in March and it was severe weather season, like literally right there. And I did spend a lot of extra hours at work.
Wow, that's amazing. And I always feel like my husband kind of goes into that role when there's a hurricane or severe weather where he just knows. Like there should be a support group for spouses of meteorologists, right? Because he had spent his birthday alone because his birthday is in hurricane season and like Hurricane Dorian's here, so I'm at work. But it's tough, but that's really great. It's supportive spouses is definitely important.
Yeah, they're a special breed. I think someone that marries someone in TV on either side, you have to be one of a kind. I feel like to be able to constantly help because our schedules are so crazy.
Yeah, and we're also a little crazy too.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so let's talk about pregnancy and being on TV pregnant. Not only being on TV pregnant, because I feel like anchors have this like nice little desk they get to sit behind and hide behind, but like we're on display in HD TV, turning sideways. So how did you, first of all, hide pregnancies and then announce pregnancies, or did you just pull like a knocked up and never talk about it? Like, how did you guys handle that?
So I waited probably unusually long amount of time. I guess I was just nervous to tell the public. I got so many messages from viewers and emails being like, "You're pregnant. When are you announcing?" Which I feel like is the rudest thing to do. You never ask a woman if they're pregnant. But I waited until I think I was around 6 months. It was last June. And finally I was just like, I have to announce, because I was renting dresses from Rent the Runway and just like trying to hide. But it was just like, I'm tiny and petite. It was too late. So I finally announced, and now it's funny because a year later, everyone's been joking and they're like, remember last spring when everyone knew Amy was pregnant, but we weren't talking about Amy being pregnant? And I was like, how did you know? And the one girl's like, because you brought a ginger ale every single morning. And I know you normally have a cup of coffee. Like, why would you be drinking ginger ale at 4 a.m.? But I don't know. After I announced, I felt so much freer finally, like it was such a relief. And I would say if I do this again, like I would definitely probably announce sooner rather than later, because I felt like for like 3 months I was like sucking it in and like, hiding all the first trimester things, which is really, really hard to do when you're in the public eye.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know why I waited. I guess I was just nervous. It's a big deal.
It's so funny because I was editing something that you were in and I was like, oh, Amy's pregnant. I must have missed the announcement. Like I saw you were in the balloon. You were in the hot air balloon.
Yeah.
And the camera panned back and you turned to the side. I was like, that's a baby bump.
Yeah. I was like
so
never turning on the weather wall. I was always just straight.
Wear black and stay straight on. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's funny. And the first trimester too, I feel like you don't really look pregnant. You just kind of look heavy, right? You just kind of look bloated. Yeah. So it's frustrating. It's a hard time.
Yes.
What about you, Tera?
Even though I feel like I eat an Oreo and I come into work and someone's like, "Is Tera pregnant again?" I'm like, "Oh,
always."
Right?
They always want us to be pregnant.
I have a very unique story for my first. So the Charlotte station I worked for was Fox. It was very conversational and we had a psychic on. I was 6 weeks with my first baby. So you know how scared you are with your first. And I had several friends that had lost babies, unfortunately. And so I was very protective. And he says on air to me, "I'm getting mama vibes from you at 6 weeks." And I was like, "You are?" Like, "Well, I want to be a mom." And so it like came out, it's 6 weeks for me. And so I had to battle through, like that mind of like, oh my gosh, if I lose this, I'm going to have to tell everyone. Like it was very stressful. But obviously getting to say they played the psychic, he was right, Tera's pregnant. So it was kind of a cool announcement. And we ended up doing like a cut the cake to see what kind of gender it was, even though everyone knew we did it for the audience. So I think getting the audience in on it just makes it so special. They feel like they're in on such a unique period of your life, such a fun period of your life. So I loved telling. But that waiting period for me was the hardest because people notice. Like I can see, Amy, you're still glowing. You still have just that new baby glow. Whereas viewers, when they watch you every day, they know. And you know what I mean? It's hard to hide it from them. It's just like with your kids, you don't want to lie to them, So I loved being able to share it.
With me and with my first, actually with both of them, my goal was to get as far along as I could before I felt like I had to say something. First of all, because I'm kind of paranoid and I didn't want to be in a situation where, something went wrong and I had already let the cat out of the bag. It's interesting. I've kind of through life, I've gone through periods where I feel like I want to be much more private with anything that's off camera. And so I also struggled with that a lot. I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily know if I want all the outside advice and everything like that. But one thing that made my first pregnancy so special was that my news director, a female, was also pregnant at the exact same time as I was. And she ended up having her baby like 3 days away from when I had mine. And so for the station, we had, dual baby showers and dual, like it made it so much bigger and so much more fun because I wasn't the only one going through it. And my boss knew exactly what I was going through. And there's probably no better situation than having someone who is literally in your corner because they really have been there and are doing that.
Yeah, that's huge. Did you all have something that, and I had an interesting first announcement. I was very excited. I was like you, Tara. I was so excited to tell people that waiting was so long. And then we finally reached that point and people were like, we already knew. I got a lot of other stuff is growing too, Emily. We know. I announced on air and I surprised my coworkers too. I was doing a live shot and I was out live and I just had a t-shirt on that said future forecaster on it with a little arrow pointing down.
That's awesome.
So that was fun. The second one, I was a little bit more, I was older, I was angrier. I was tired. I was working mornings. So I kind of pulled the whole, how long can I go? And then I'm not really going to tell people. I'm just going to kind of casually, put it out there with my coworkers and not ever really bring it up. So very different experiences for the two. But with both, I had major breathless problems while doing the weather on air from the get-go, from the very beginning. I could not make it through 2.5 minutes of weather. It was so hard to breathe. Did you all have that issue?
I did. I had a consultant that said to me, she was like, you sound like you're out of breath. And I was like, I have a baby on my lungs. My first was breech. And so his head sat right underneath on my ribs. And so, yeah, I definitely had that. I feel like I can have that sometimes going 3 minutes because the morning only gives me about 1.5 minutes. So if I do the noon, I'm going 3. I lose my breath. So then add a baby on top of it. It was yeah, that was definitely a problem. I was probably honestly, my biggest issue. I didn't really get sick, but yeah, losing my breath by the end of each forecast.
I had more of the sickness, I think. Yeah, I was going to say, that was one thing that was hard to hide because I was throwing up so much. And I'd be there's a little trash can in our weather center that was definitely used a couple times. Yeah, I think that was the hardest part, in the beginning, just hiding that part of it. And then at the end, I don't know if you want to use this or not, Emily, but the lightning crotch would get me. I'd be on air and I'd be
What is lightning crotch? I don't know that I had this.
It's
what is
when
this?
their head is really, really far down, I guess, and pushing on your pelvis, and it literally feels like lightning. Lightning shock.
That's the ultimate meteorologist mom term, I guess.
I mean, lightning crotch is probably, I don't care if you use this, but lightning crotch is probably the best way to describe it because it feels like that. And it would almost make me giggle because it's kind of painful, but more just kind of funny because it stops you in your tracks. And that would get me the most from walking to the green screen.
Oh, wow. Did anybody go into labor at work?
Yes.
You did? What happened?
So my first pregnancy, I was at home. Everything was fine. My second pregnancy, I actually kind of had that spidey sense. I was doing the noon show that day. And I would always do a picture of the day in whatever maternity dress I was wearing, and I posted to social media. And so I just had this feeling. I was like, I feel like this is going to be it. This is probably going to be my last day. It was a Friday. I don't think I'm going to be back next week. And so before the noon show, we took the baby bump picture. I'm doing the show and I'm like, and because it was not my first, it was my second, I kind of knew what was going on and my water broke.
Oh my God.
I was in a puddle at work with my coworkers going, this is not good in the middle of the show. So I call my husband, I call my news director, I let the anchor know he was a male solo anchor that day. And I just said, okay, I called Jamie, he's coming to get me. There's no need to panic, but just so you know, the baby's coming and the baby's coming now. And then I called the cleaning guy and I was like, James, I am so sorry. This is a mess. It was the most embarrassing moment that I've ever had off air. Thankfully, it didn't happen simultaneously while I was on air. It was in a commercial break. But the anchor ended up having to do final weather because obviously I was a little incapacitated. And I just remember it it was cold because it was November. So I remember I had a big like trench coat, and I just kind of wrapped the trench coat around myself. And I basically like waddled around the station because, what do you do? And it was actually the smoothest, easiest delivery of the two. 5 hours from start to finish, no issues, smooth sailing. Fortunately, it all worked out. But that was, it was quite the memorable moment. And then it became a big little social media thing because I got to say, okay, my water broke. Baby's coming any minute now. Scott had to do final weather for me because I couldn't. And so basically it was like updating people on air, like minute by minute. And then for the 5 o'clock news, boom, I had a baby already. And so they were able to share it pretty much instantaneously. Like, you remember Chikage was on the news today at noon. Well, here's the baby.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I got off air and I was to the point where I was like, I'm done. I'm so close to my due date. I'm going into maternity leave now because you want to save those days, right? Because you're either going to use them before or after the baby. So I got pretty close with both, I think within a couple of days of leaving, going on maternity leave, and then boom, baby. Second one was a planned C-section, so that was easier to control.
I worked up until 41 weeks, and I think I made everybody super nervous the final week, because same thing, I wanted to save my days, and I didn't want to waste them just to sit around the house, so I kept working. And I think the final weekend, they actually had someone training with me who was going to take over, because my new instructor was pretty nervous that I was still saying, yeah, I want to work. I was like, don't take me off the schedule yet. I don't want to waste a single day. So I literally worked up until, and they had, I think the following Monday, they had somebody, or I was scheduled to go in to be induced if I hadn't had the baby because I was 41 weeks. And then I ended up going into labor that Sunday. So it was it ended up working out perfectly because I would have been done work anyways at that point. But I think that final week, everyone, like you were saying behind the camera, Tera was like, is Amy okay? Is Amy okay? I can't believe, everyone kept saying, I can't believe she's still here. I was so tired of hearing that. I can't believe she's still here. And I was like, well, I got to work. I got to save my days.
Funny, considering you didn't tell them you were pregnant until 6 months.
I know.
It wasn't even that long.
So it was only 3 months of waiting for them.
I will say with me, both of mine came early. So I tried to do the same thing as Amy, where I was like, I'm not going to waste any days. And because my first came early, everyone's like, oh, well, if your first came early, and there's all these theories on whether your second will be as well or not. And I was just like, well, we'll see how everything plays out. And yeah, both of them were early. So it's not like I could have said, okay, it's my due date now. No, they were both early.
I think the maternity benefits have gotten a lot better too. Tera, how long have you been with Sinclair?
For 7 years now. And they probably have the best maternity package. My first station in Charlotte, I could only use sick time. That's all they gave me.
It's come a long ways over the years. Everybody.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of stations are. I still don't think 12 weeks is enough. I feel like you're finally starting to get in a rhythm, and then mom leaves and goes to work. And so everything is thrown off again. I still think we need a lot more time at home. I was a breastfeeding mom. I breastfed all of mine almost the 2 years and a little bit past the 2 years for my third. So I also pumped while at work. And then would come home and feed the entire time and wake up to feed. That was really important to me. So that was also another challenge when you're back at work.
To me, that felt like a bigger challenge than being pregnant on air. The being tired because you're a mom, and then everybody loves a pregnant lady, but nobody gives a crap about a breastfeeding.
So true. It's so true. That's where the burden part comes in, right? She's got to do this. It's do you want it? Right. It's going to come out sometime. Do you want it to come out on air? Or do you want it to come out for the baby?
Did you ever pump on air?
No, I did not. I had something that I recorded and you could hear the sound, but I was but people, so I don't know about you guys. My first station, they had me in a bathroom, which is now illegal. My second station gave me my entire office all to myself. It was wonderful. And then here, they wanted me to go on the third floor with no computer. And I was like, I have to work. I'm not going to waste that time. Time is so limited for us. And so I stayed in our weather office, which is surrounded by windows. Now it is away from everyone, but definitely accidentally somebody saw as I was taking everything out, came around the corner. We were getting ready to do snow coverage. He comes around the corner and I was like, oh my God. So yeah, thankfully we're friends and he's never mentioned it again. So.
I have pumped in some weird places. And Amy, you could probably understand this because you are in the same shift that I used to do with the hometown hotspot.
Oh my gosh,
so
yeah.
the live shots, like it's morning live shots for 5 hours and you're in a car with a photographer. And I had amazing photographers. One of them is actually Amy's husband. So he was well versed with me pumping in a live truck. But yeah, some weird places where I've done. And then at the station, it was actually harder because, like Tara said, you're often put in a room on the 3rd floor and you're like, well, no, I have 10 minutes between hits here. I need to run up there, run back, and it would be great if I worked. So there came a point where I would just do it at the studio.
And they do, I think they do have a designated room now, but same thing. It's a room without a computer. I stopped before I went back to work, like right the week before I just like started toning it down. Cause I was like, I don't know how I'm going to juggle this. And like Emily said, I'm in a car with a young photographer and like half the morning and stuff. So it would have been really hard. But like we have a 5.5 hour morning show, like they don't give us breaks. It would have been on me. And like, it's funny, since I've been back, nobody's asked me ever, like, do you need to pump or anything? So I don't know what I would have done. Like, it's just assumed that I'm not, I guess. Like, it would have been really, really difficult. It was never a conversation or never, I don't know what they think I did, but I mean, I took care of it and stopped. But, you know, it would have been very, very hard.
For when I was in Charleston and had the baby, they brought in the weekend meteorologist to help me on the morning show. He would come in and he'd do an hour of the Fox show so that I could go pump. And it was great. I do think there's something to be said about female management, though. Chikage, like you said, somebody who's been through it and knows, knows to ask those questions.
Yeah, at that particular station, we had a mother's room. It was just, obviously, if your boss is also having a baby, they're going to have it all figured out. And that was with my first. With my second, as I mentioned, I had the baby and literally turned around and interviewed 3 weeks later. It was a male news director. And so I basically handed all the milk that I had, like we froze as much as we could. I handed everything over to my husband. I was like, good luck. I left my 3-week-old baby, got on a plane. Unfortunately, there were no nonstops, so I had to do an overnight. It was, unfortunate. But I meet the news director. I'm like, hi, and you do know I just had a baby, right? Yes. You're a dad, right? Yes. Do you remember when your wife had a baby? Yes. I said, so just so you know, I'm going to have to take a break here and there. And this big bag I have is what I brought so I could pump milk. I mean, it was the most awkward, embarrassing thing ever. And right before they were going to do my audition, I was like, okay, I need timeout. I was like, because they don't realize that you have needs and you have that schedule. So they let me go in an office and pump. And the whole time I'm like, okay, I'm about to go and do my audition for them. And the milk spilled all over my dress. So here I am blotting this wet spot right before doing the audition that I knew they were going to send up to Sinclair Corporate to see. And
trying not to cry.
Trying to figure out, like, obviously, not the ideal situation, and through it all, somehow they still wanted to offer me the job. But ironically, on the other side of things, because I had met everyone when I had literally just had the baby, once I started, a few months later, I still had some of the baby weight. And then as time went on, I started getting back down to my regular size. And I actually had people come up to me, Chikage, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm great. Why? Well, it seems like you're losing a lot of weight. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, good. Because no one met me when I was my usual size. So all they saw was me just starting to get smaller and smaller instead of the other way around.
The audacity of people to make comments about bodies, like that they do not do to men, and especially to somebody who would have had a baby recently or perhaps is trying to have a baby. Like, I don't know if any of you experienced this, but I had fertility troubles and went through IVF on air and was gaining a lot of weight on air, and everybody thought I was pregnant. And even my coworkers would come up and say, is there something you want to tell us? And I was like, no, there's not. Like, there's no news to share yet. So that was probably the hardest part for me of the whole ordeal, was like this public image of your body on display for everybody to judge when internally you might be going through something incredibly heartbreaking, and I know other people go through miscarriages and have to kind of show up for work and act like everything's fine. And that sounds awful too.
Yeah, it's so hard.
But I have funny stories when it comes to that too. It's like, the stories of breastfeeding on air and then like the stories of giving yourself a shot, while you're at,
I've heard your story from this, Emily.
Yes.
This is crazy.
So there's, when you're going through IVF, you're giving yourself shots in the stomach every morning at a certain time. And so like I'd be on a live shot. I remember one day I was at a drug rehab center and I was in the bathroom with like my needle. And I was like, don't drop the needle. Like, there's people on the other side of me in these stalls. I was like, don't drop the needle. And then like you have to do the trigger shot with IVF at a certain assigned time, which was at like 10:30 on a Tuesday night or something. I was doing the news that night. So this is not a shot you can give yourself. They draw a target on your butt and they're like, do the trigger shot at this exact time in this exact spot. So I ran out of the studio, ran into the makeup room, whipped up my dress. My husband comes in, gives me the shot. I run back into the studio. So I got my trigger shot like in the middle of the 10 p.m. news. But that was definitely one of the more interesting ones. But it's crazy, the stuff that people don't know that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure. I was super fluffy when I was breastfeeding. I couldn't lose weight. I wasn't one of the lucky ones that got skinny.
Me too.
Breastfeeding, I held on to it. And it really bothered me. I just felt so uncomfortable in my own body. And people were commenting and you had to try and ignore it. And definitely had bosses make comments about losing baby weight, never saying to me, you have to lose it. But like, I know it's part of the process. And it's like, you're just dying inside because
that breaks
you
my
are
heart.
already, you're already worried about it. But you have to choose baby over body. But yet at the same time, you're wondering, is this going to affect my job? Is this going to affect my position? Is this something that I need to give up to keep my job? That's a scary feeling.
Right. It's such an image-based job. It's hard. And I had a consultant ask me after my first if women in my family had trouble losing weight after babies. And it like was something that ate me up for months afterwards.
Yes.
Months. Like I remember girdling myself in like this thing because we had a promo shoot and, it's awful. It is awful.
There's some country song that talks about losing the baby weight. And it's like, it's been 7 years and, I haven't lost my baby weight or something. And that's what one of my news directors quoted to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to lose this weight. You just got to wait until I'm done breastfeeding. Like, it was like just such a, just a dagger to the heart. It's crazy what we go through.
I know. And looking back now, I'm like, I wish I had like a really good comeback. Like, don't worry. Those extra 15 pounds are not affecting my forecasting skills.
That was definitely another advantage with my first of having my news director on the exact same schedule as me. I gained 30-something pounds. She gained 50-something pounds. So when we both got back into the office at the exact same time, there was no heat on me at all because they saw Lindsay and they're like, oh, this is totally normal. People come back from having babies and they take a while to lose weight. So with my first, it was so great. With my second, it was a lot trickier. But yeah, it was probably the most serendipitous thing to have the same timeline as my boss.
Did you all have any like guilt or shame about going on maternity leave because of our shift schedules and somebody having to take over your duties? Basically, it's not like a desk job where it can just sit empty for a couple months, but like somebody has to completely change their schedule to cover for you.
Yeah, mine actually fell kind of leading into the holidays, and the end of it, my first day back, I mean, it depends when you have the baby, when you're going to go back. And my first day back was potentially looking like it was going to be Christmas and Christmas morning. And I know. And I talked to my news director about it, like leading into it. And I was like, I know you're working on the holiday schedule. Like, this is like a potential. And he's like, I'm not going to like make you come back on Christmas morning. Like, you're having a new baby. Like, of course not. So like, I'm very lucky. They were super nice. And I actually ended up like extending. I did 12 weeks plus. I think I added on a week at the end. So I didn't have to come back Christmas morning, which was like the best thing ever, because I would have cried all morning long if that hadn't been my first morning back. But I remember feeling super guilty going into it that I was getting Thanksgiving and Christmas off, because like, that's like kind of unheard of in this industry. You always work at least like 2 holidays, and taking the 2 big ones off, I was just feeling like really bad. I mean, you can't time it, but it just happened to be that time. And I felt bad that it was going to screw my coworkers over, but we worked it out. We actually got someone to come in and help freelance. So that took the load off of my coworkers. So I think they were happy, and it kind of all like worked out. And you guys know 3 months goes so fast that now it's already, I've been back at work and it's like a distant memory. So it's funny how such a big thing at the time seems so minimal now, but I remember at the time feeling so bad.
I mean, I feel bad even taking vacation, like in getting sick. I mean, really, because we have to switch. People have to switch their lives so much. We don't have someone that comes and helps in the morning for me. So it's switching the noon guy that's normally the noon at night, and now he's waking up, at 3 a.m. That's really hard. So I always feel bad about it. I felt bad until someone said to me like, "Oh, you're getting a vacation." And I'm like, "You what? You have no idea. You literally are not sleeping, and you are around the clock helping out another human being. That is not a vacation."
And like healing too,
Yes, exactly. So it's perspective. I feel like after I got to my 3rd, it was like, no, like I need every second that I can get to, to develop this relationship and have it be strong before I get back to work. But there was a little part of me, I'm going to be honest, that I was nervous that it would be negative upon me that I had to leave. Like if someone was filling in for me and doing a good job, that maybe they should take the position, because if they would be a male, they wouldn't need that time off. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of that scared feeling that that's going to happen too.
So I felt incredibly guilty with my second, because as you all know, I had a 3-week-old baby when I interviewed for my current job, and I accepted it, and I was on maternity leave. And I was thinking to myself, how do I do my maternity leave, go back to my station so that I don't have to pay anything back, but then quit and go to another station right after? So I went into my management and I said, "All right, so I just wanted to let you know that I have this offer. It's, I've always wanted to be a chief meteorologist, and I know that I just had a baby, but, and, amazingly, sometimes you work it out with really good people who are able to finagle it to where I didn't have to pay back maternity leave. They were going to have to replace me anyway, but I did have to come back. So I worked for exactly 30 days after coming back from maternity leave so that I wouldn't have to pay back my maternity leave. And that gave me time to transition over to a whole new place. And so during that 30 days, or during the whole maternity leave, it wasn't just, nursing and diapers and all that kind of thing. It was house hunting and, trying to put everything in place for this new city. And so what we ended up doing is 2 cars driving from, we left our house at like in the morning sometime on a Saturday morning. I drove 1 car. My husband drove the other car. We each had a child. And we stopped one night halfway, and then we made it to Austin Sunday night, and I went to work Monday morning, and we closed on our house the next day. So I mean, it was ridiculous. I would not advise to anyone, to any new mom, to try and transition jobs when you have all of that going on. But we all do things where we juggle personal and career. And in this instance, I knew that the opportunity to be a chief in a place that I would like to live might not come back. So I took it while I had the opportunity, and we just made everything else work. But it was incredibly difficult. So yes, I felt guilty, but then again, I also needed every minute of that time, not only to take care of my baby, but also to plan what life would look like on the other side.
Wow. So do you feel, with all that juggling, do you feel like that is helpful in your job now? Like, especially you, Chikage, being in this kind of management position of, we can multitask, we can think about 400 different things at the same time. Do you feel like it's really helped you, or do you feel like motherhood has held you back at all?
I think that there are certainly advantages and disadvantages professionally, but as far as being able to do everything that you set out to do, I think that it really forces you to become very schedule oriented, very attention to detail and timing and everything in order to make sure it all gets done. And I've never considered myself a super mom, but sometimes I'll look back after a busy day and realize, even now with older kids, like, we did a lot today. I don't know if I could have done that as a 20-something before kids,
Yeah. I even look at 20-somethings now without kids, and I'm like, wow, they think their life is hard. That's really
busy.
sweet. That's cute. What about like jobs? So we know, Chikage, this did not hold you back from taking a job. It was actually kind of worked together. Have you ever not taken a job because of being a mother?
I purposely stayed in the morning. I love the idea of being able to work full time, but really be a stay-at-home mom at the same time. You're kind of cheating the system a little bit. Now that my kids are all in school, I don't see them nearly as much as I would like. And so that in some way kind of makes me a little bit sad, but yet I love the mornings for that reason too. I still get to pick them up from school. I still get to have those after school moments with them for me. And I'd love to hear, Chikage, how you manage this, because I think the night position as a mom, at least for me, would be really tough, missing every practice, every game, every pickup, you pick and choose what you're going to miss. Because you can't be there for it all. But I think it would be tough for me. My kids are really big into sports. And my husband is a trooper and takes them to all the practices. But like I get to be there during important moments too. But I got nervous to take that night job because I knew I needed to sleep in the morning and I could be missing a lot in the afternoon and the evening. And so I really steered all of my opportunities to just be mornings.
So on my end of things, whenever the kids were little, it was a dream. We did mommy and me dance class, mommy and me swimming lessons, library story time, because all that stuff happens in the morning. And guess what? I was off. So that worked out really well. Then once it was like kinder and, getting into school and everything, I know a lot of people who work the night shift don't, but I always wake up to send my kids off to school. So 6 a.m., even if I've been at work late with storms till 1 or whatever in the morning, 6 a.m. alarm goes off. I'm the first person my youngest daughter sees. I knock on her door at 6:10. Hey, honey, time to go to school. So that's our time, if you will. And then as long as the weather's quiet, I always come home for dinner break. Granted, when the kids were younger, sometimes my dinner break would keep them up later than they should be. But now my kids stay up a little bit later, so we're able to at least have a little bit of family time then.
Yeah, every day is different here with us. But I mean, I call myself, I think you described this too, Tera, like a working mom, but a stay-at-home mom. Like, I feel like I just do it all and I like it. I like being busy. So I like the multitasking, but it is definitely interesting to hear how nights work. Because I don't think I'd ever not apply for a job because it was a nighttime job, but we definitely have to kind of reevaluate how things happen, because now I work weekends. So we actually have 4 days a week where we don't have childcare because my husband's home on the weekends and then I'm home Mondays and Tuesdays. So it's just the 3 mornings a week we have help. And I mean, it definitely helps. And I do think I don't know how you all feel. I definitely think being a working mom makes me a better stay-at-home mom. I don't know. I think like getting out of the house and having my me time and putting on makeup and getting dressed makes me better when I come home than if I were just home all day. Because the days where I am just home all day, I feel like my hair's in a messy bun. I'm like a mess. I don't always shower. Like, I feel like you need that time to kind of get out and work too. And then it makes me better when I come home because I appreciate the days more where I'm just like a mess.
I always felt like there was no like normal in between look. I was either like the hot mess, terrible hair, sweatpants, or like decked out false eyelashes, like Spanxed on air. So So there's no happy medium.
There's no in between.
Oh.
But I do love the balance of the two. I love being at work part of the day and then coming home and being in full mom mode.
It's a little exhausting, though.
Yes. There's no more napping. I used to nap after working morning shifts, and now I'm like, wow, I used to nap in the afternoon. Now that never happens. You get some like energy.
When your kids get to that age where they're staying up later than you, when you're on mornings, like that was kind of the point for me where I was like, I think I need to stop doing this, because and my husband travels a lot now too. And so it was like having to stay up to put them to bed, and then, trying to figure out the morning shift. But yeah, once they it's easy when they're little and they're going to bed at 7 p.m. You're like, yes, I'm going to bed too. But then they're staying up till 8 or 9. And all of a sudden it's a little bit more complicated. But
it's true.
Well, I won't keep you guys for much longer. The last thing I want to ask you is, well, for one, I wanted to ask about holidays and if you've missed any kind of like important holidays with your kids because you've had to work. And then also ask about what your kids think about what you do, especially Chikage, because you awkward teenage years. I feel like my kids would be they're getting to the point where they'd be super embarrassed to see me on TV and not think it's cool anymore.
So with holidays, yes, it kind of comes with the territory. I've missed a ton of holidays with them, but the advantages to working the night shift are you're always there for Christmas morning. And that of all holidays, I'm like, I've worked bunches and bunches of Christmases, but I've never missed a Christmas morning. So, there are things like that make it worthwhile. And then from the kid standpoint, all my children have ever known was mommy goes to work and goes and she's on TV. They don't know a life outside of that. But it'll be funny because sometimes my kids' friends will be like, hey, I saw your mom on a billboard looking good. It's so weird that that's the normal that they know is, oh yeah, mom's on that billboard over on the highway there. And now with an older child, I actually feel like just this past weekend, for instance, she wanted to go shopping and I was like, shopping? Okay, cool. I'm going to go shopping for dresses for work. And she's like, oh, don't do that to me, Mom. But we had a great time. So she's now like, oh, and I ended up wearing the dress on Monday. She said, Mom, I like the dress. It looks good. So we've kind of, in a more mature world, she's now like more accepting of the fact that, yeah, Mom goes and she does her thing and we find common ground despite it all. And I will say another thing that I would hope in the future, which I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen, is I've tried to nudge my girls to be into STEM, and I take them to all types of, events and this kind of thing, thinking maybe I'll have 2 scientists in the future. I don't know if either one will bite, but that's kind of in my mind would be amazing for them to not necessarily cultivate a love of meteorology, but just to cultivate a love of science and want to pursue something in that avenue.
What about you, Tera?
I think 2 things are really funny about it. I think that my kids think moms go to bed at 5 o'clock. And I think they think that's so normal that they go to bed after their mom. I think that they love the idea, like they kiss. I'm not allowed to clean the TV in our living room. It's right outside of here. They kiss it every single morning. I've got really sweet, loving boys. And you can see the handprints, you can see the lips on the screen, but that's their way that they say good morning to mom, but that's their normal. Well, for me, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit because I look forward to weekend mornings so much because I actually get to be there with them. They're so special. It's so special to get them on the bus or to take them into school. Well, that can be a really, really stressful point for a lot of moms. For me, it makes my heart so happy when I get to do it. So they're still in the cool category. They still have kids at school that'll say something to them. They're like, Mom, he knew you were on TV. But that's like being sad about not being there in the morning with them. But yeah, holidays are really tough. We've actually adjusted. So where we are, you either work Thanksgiving or Christmas every single year. You go one or the other. And so if we know that I'm going to be working Christmas, we do everything Christmas Eve. I email Santa and I email the elves and I tell them that I'm going to be gone and to please deliver the gifts early so that I can be a part of it. So we always adjust so that I don't miss those moments. I've had one Easter where I worked and they found their baskets and my husband did the video so I could watch all of it, but it still broke my heart. It's just, those special moments are really hard to miss. They are. So like, that's so cool, Chikage, that you've been able to be a part of all those. Cause I've definitely missed a few. We've adjusted, but I've definitely missed a few that you just don't forget.
Yeah, I'm dreading doing holiday schedules for that reason, but I do know it'll just be adjusting. I love your idea, Tera, about Christmas Eve. So I will keep that in my back pocket when the time comes. I think I have a few years. Yeah, I love that. But it's funny you said you appreciate the mornings you have off more, because I love my Monday, Tuesday mornings off. We call it our breakfast shuffle. And I love like doing the first bottle of the day and just like getting the dog out the door and like just relaxing with her on the couch. And I think I appreciate those 2 mornings more than any other morning, because like I'm not home on weekend mornings. And I know my husband also enjoys the breakfast shuffle. So we love like taking turns doing the breakfast shuffle on our mornings off. But yeah, I appreciate the mornings I have off way more than, I think it makes up for it because you appreciate the 2 mornings so much.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and Amy, and if I have any advice for you, it's fight for those holidays too, because sometimes we feel like we have to work something and maybe somebody's more willing than you realize to work a holiday. So like if you tell someone how important it is to you, or tell your manager, like this means a lot, fight for what you deserve, because we're not all created equal, it's sometimes you're doing something that somebody else isn't able to do. And I just feel like we have to fight for what we deserve, and we don't always feel like we deserve things. So,
and time goes fast. I mean, I'm only a few months in and I feel like she's already like a teenager. So I'm sure you all can attest that time flies, right? Like before we know it, they're big kids. It's crazy.
For sure. Oh my gosh. Yes. Teenager right around the corner. I spoke at my son's school a couple of years ago and he was like the whole time, like, did not want to make eye contact, already ashamed of me, but that's okay.
I feel like when I go to school events too, and people know that obviously I do the weather, if there's going to be rain on like movie night, everyone just kind of watches me and I'm like, oh, yeah, girl, like it's not my choice. You know what I mean? And like, they'll always come up to you. What do you think? Do we need to cancel this? I'm like, oh, you probably want to, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm sorry.
Is there anything else you want to share about motherhood and meteorology and the weird convergence of the two?
I would just say if anyone is watching this and thinking about adding to their family, they're a meteorologist currently working out there and concerned about how becoming a mom will affect the longevity of their career or the trajectory of their career. I think my experience speaks volumes in that I was pregnant during the process of trying to get another job. I moved, the whole 9 yards. It can be done. Like if you are motivated enough and if you have the drive and the passion to succeed in both the professional world as well as having your kids think you're the bee's knees, it can be done. It's not easy, but I would definitely say if you want to have a family, if you want to be a mom, maybe not delay, that part of your life just to get your professional goals. You can do both at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I was told when I was in internship at WGN by one of the meteorologists that has since retired, that I couldn't have it all. I was either going to have to choose my career or I was going to have to choose a family. And I said right then and there to myself, absolutely not. I will have it all. I am going to have the family. I'm going to have the job that I love. And so just like you were determined to become a meteorologist, which was probably pretty hard, I know it was for me, have that determination to make it work for your family. And it will. It will. And you're going to love it because it's really special.
Yeah. And I'd say, I have friends who do 9-to-5 jobs and they don't see their kids at all. They're in daycare all day. So I would say one of the benefits and the silver lining to this job is you either work a morning shift or a night shift. And then you do have little moments either, around it where you get to spend almost more time with your kids. You might be a little sleepy, but you get kind of the mix of both, which I think is so cool. And that's like a perk of this industry, that you can be a mom and a meteorologist and make it work. And, I think it makes you a better person.
And we're all replaceable as meteorologists, but we're not replaceable as moms, right? So I always tell people, make your decisions accordingly there, because there's going to be other opportunities for jobs, but this is it. We only get one chance with these kids. So, but you're all doing a great job. You're all amazing mothers. And I hope that people listening can reach out to these amazing mothers if they need advice or if they're stuck in a spot where they're feeling kind of down or need some advice. So thank you all for your varying different thoughts and opinions today. And I love the stories too.
Thanks for having me, Emily.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so much.
guys. Off the Radar is a production of the National Weather Desk. Make sure you're following the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes publish every Tuesday morning. Please share this episode with any mothers you know or anyone you think might be interested in learning more about the behind-the-scenes action with Meteorologist Moms. We'd also love you to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And let us know what you think of the show and give me some ideas for future episodes. A huge thanks to meteorologists Chikage Windler, Tera Blake, and Amy Aaronson. Please feel free to reach out to these Meteorologist Moms on social media. You can reach out to me as well. I'd love to hear from you. For the National Weather Desk, I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie. Make it a great day.